Doing?
Got it. Live streamed.
Yeah,
You
good.
can hear me.
I can
I'm
hear
on my
you.
iPad. I've never quite, I always hold it in my hand, so it's always difficult to get a picture of me.
Oh,
There we
okay. I
are.
see.
There we are. So you're,
Where are you at now? Are you at
no,
home?
I'm at home in Brighton.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. But so it's always difficult to get a picture of me. I mean, I've got to get one of these things where I hold it at a on a something or other, and you can see my face, but it's not happening. So, but I can listen really well.
Oh, and this is Andrea. Andrea. Good. Just a side note.
Great. People are starting to wander in. Okay.
Jim has his dog. I see a picture of a dog with Jim. That's his.
I think there are two dogs actually.
Oh, yes. That's excellent.
Well, they passed away. One of them passed away. Yeah, it was really hard for him. Yeah.
One time I'll get that. Add a profile picture. Oh, I see. You can actually do that. Okay.
All right. And we have another person joining us, Carol. And I'm going to give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Okay.
And while we're at it, I want to say that I want to thank Ellen Messer, who provided me with some consultation regarding the planning of this human rights event. And I also want to thank Helen Jacobson, who isn't here, but I want to thank her and acknowledge that she really was very helpful in efforts to plan our commemoration of Human Rights Day this year. And so I said, we'll start in 1 minute. I have to say that this is not something that I do very much. Sherry is the one who does this all the time. It's been a very long time since I've organized or hosted a program like this, whereas Sherry is like, she does it all the time, but I'll do my best. And it's very easy. So let me just, you all know Tzipi here. So I don't really have to introduce her very much. She's come from the Ukraine. She was a student at Jewish Theological Seminary. She has a master's degree from an institution of very high learning in Germany in Jewish civilizations. And she taught Jewish subjects at a college in Ukraine. And now she's been ordained rabbi and she's working in Toronto for a congregation there as the assistant or associate rabbi. And Tzipi has been very, very, very actively involved with the people in Ukraine. She would be there now if it weren't for the war. And so she has a lot of current things to tell us about. And the topic is a twin topic. It's about what is going on for the people in Ukraine and for the Jewish people in Ukraine, and how they're getting help from people outside of Ukraine and what kind of help and how they're getting it. In addition, Tzipi is eager to answer questions, so she's going to leave some time for that. Okay, by all means, please.
Thank you so much for the introduction, James. And I'm very happy to be here, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. And it's always a wonderful opportunity for me to talk a little bit about what's going on in Ukraine. And yeah, I'm sincerely very happy when people are interested in the subject. And as we spoke, it's a long war. It's already 8 months, right? And everyone is getting tired of it. And volunteers are getting tired, of course. And people who live in Ukraine are very tired of it. And people are kind of tired of listening, like hearing about it. So that's why I'm very grateful that you joined today. And as was mentioned, I just remember that I do have a MA from Germany, but I was planning to get another from the Jewish Theological Seminary. But because war started and I got involved in volunteer work really quickly, I really didn't have time to complete my MA. So I abandoned it, and it's on hold probably forever now. And it's just life. So let me just tell you a little bit more about how that happened. The war began, of course, on February, the full-scale war, as we say it, on February 24th this year. And the war itself began in 2014. So it's a long war. But before, it wasn't that present in the media, and it did not affect most of Ukraine. Only certain parts of Ukraine were occupied. So we don't call it a full-scale war. So what's now, it's full-scale war, though the war is 8 years also happening. So I was in New York when the war began. I was there with my partner, Victor, and I was preparing to graduate from the Jewish Theological Seminary and to be ordained as a rabbi. And yeah, we remember how it was. It was just like yesterday, maybe just like today. It all feels like a very, very long and exhausting day that is never ending, but we are hoping that it will end soon, as soon as possible. So we were in New York. Everywhere in the media, it was like, Russia is going to attack Ukraine. Russia is going to attack. Like everyone was waiting, and we were on the news, watching what's happening constantly. And then it happened. And, it's like always a paradox. It's going to happen, but like when it happens, like you're not ready for that. Cannot be ready for that. I don't think anyone can be ready for war. And war is such a scary thing that, obviously we'll all know about the history of the war, the Second World War, First World War, Holocaust, all of the tragedies of that. But then when it happens for real at your home, it's like, it cannot be ready and prepared for that. So I think the first most natural thing for most of us who were, really worried was to like start messaging everyone and like asking, where are you? What's happening? Are you alive? Are you safe? How can I help you? And because, I'm a Jewish activist, and I was a Jewish activist before, and I have a lot of friends who are either Jewish or not Jewish activists, but people who are always active in their communities and in my community. So kind of really fast, really, really fast, we realized, that, we can do this, we can do that. And we kind of started to collaborate really, really without any supervision or organization. No one told us what to do, but we started to act. And I think about it every day, what a blessing it is to be a Jew, because we have so many friends all over the world. And I have so many friends in every country, almost in every country in Europe. I have friends. I have friends, obviously, in North America. I have friends in other countries as well, in Asia and everywhere. And it's just like, it's kind of a blessing, again, that you don't realize that it's there until it really starts working. So immediately I started messaging my friends who are in Europe, either my students with whom I studied, either in Germany. I also studied in Sweden in the program that is called Paideia, and it has a great networking. It's like a pan-European program with students, Jewish students all over Europe. So in the beginning, I started messaging them because we had families who needed evacuation. In the first days of the war, first weeks of the war, a lot of people were running away, especially families with children, because it wasn't safe and they were scared. And the beginning of it was a lot of like rescue operations and finding places to stay. So I would message friends and say, I have a family, they're coming to Czech Republic. Do you know like anyone who's there who can like host them? And said, okay, yeah, they can come stay in my house, for example, in my home, my apartment. So that's how we started kind of, that was like, I think the first intuitive thing to do. And I know that many organizations also at that time, they worked with evacuation, and it was very complicated, and a lot of people started to work together on that. And the way it is done, and it was done like that in the beginning, and it's done like that today, it's all using the modern technologies. And this thing is like a portal to every place, every country in the world, to any person. So I'm being in New York at that time. For me, it felt like if I was in Ukraine. The information that I had, the connection that I had, it was all very, fast. It was available for me because I could message just anyone, and within a few minutes, people would respond. So it was very fast. And people started to form this like groups on social media, group chats like on WhatsApp, on Facebook, group chats and Telegram. The one that we use in our part of the world a lot. And then started to use Signal and other platforms where people would create this completely grassroots, completely like volunteer groups of people. And I had like a lot of, I had a lot of those groups in different cities. I don't know, like in help Ukrainians in Dresden, help Ukrainians in Berlin, help Ukrainians, in Sweden. Different cities in Ukraine also organized these group chats. So if I needed to relocate someone, if I needed to find a place for someone, I would chat there, and I'm saying like, this family is right, help us to find a place for them. And a lot of people came together, and a lot of Jews came together. I think because this is something very beautiful about our culture, and at least of like 20th century for sure, is people feel very responsible for the well-being of the world and well-being of other people. So a lot of Jews, they just started to help. They've never been to Ukraine. They have like nothing to do with that, but they just like really dedicated their time. And sometimes it was like full time. People would be there online, always ready to help, ready to answer. And we would have like a very elaborate system of communication. I will give you one example. This is a story that I actually like, though I need to tell you that all kind of happy stories that happen, they are not that happy in reality, as we kind of tend to talk about them. So I will tell you the kind of the happy part, but I also want you to know the real story behind that, like things that we don't often mention because we want to have a beautiful picture, though this is what people did and how it all turned out. But there's always, because it's war, there's always underlying problems and troubles and pain in that. So what happened? I have a friend who lives in Poland. And he is my old friend. He's editor of the Jewish magazine in Poland. And he messaged me. I know him for many years, and he messaged me and he said like, oh, I have this friend in Germany and she needs help with like evacuating a family. Can she talk to me? And I said, of course, yes. So she messages me and she said, oh, I have a friend who's also from Germany and his grandma is in Ukraine and he wants to relocate her. And grandma is in the city that is called Kramatorsk. And I said, yeah, let's try to relocate. And she said, she's very she's pretty old. She's like, fragile. She cannot kind of move on her own. She needs like really help. She needs someone to go to her place and like really evacuate her. And at that time, I already met another person, also all on the internet. We're all in different countries, remember? And that person is from Turkey. And he is very, very good with finding transportation. I don't really know what's his like secret. He is a miracle worker. I don't know. Some people are just good with certain tasks. So he is very good with finding transportation. So he somehow is able always to talk to like taxi drivers and bus drivers in Ukraine and like ask them to help, and they help. So we started to like kind of brainstorm how we're going to evacuate this woman from Kramatorsk. And the problem was Kramatorsk at that time was that it was in that area that was like very swiftly occupied by Russia. And it was very soon after the massacre in Bucha, after it was revealed, right? After people knew what happened there. So they were very afraid that the same thing was going to happen in Kramatorsk. And that's why they wanted to evacuate this lady. And we were thinking, like, how can we get her out? Maybe we can find a bus. Maybe we can put her on a train. So if we put her on a train, she can get to Lviv, and from Lviv she can get to Germany. So it's pretty safe, because trains are relatively safe compared to like buses and other means of transportation. So we said, maybe we can find someone who can take her and put her on the train. But the family said, it's too hard for her. She probably, it's too difficult. She will not be comfortable traveling on the train. So my friend, Attila, he found a taxi driver who went to her home and who took her, and he relocated her to another safer place in Ukraine. So in this story, what's most important is that on the day when she was relocated from one city to another, the train station in Kramatorsk got shelled, and like dozens of people died there. And it was this moment of like, we could have sent her by train, but family decided not to do that, and that's how she got saved. And it was a real miracle, because it was exactly that day when she would be on that station when it was shelled, and it was very scary. And it was like, it's just one story. There are like hundreds of stories like that. So she was safe. She was relocated safely, and the driver took her, and everything is fine. And this kind of stories, they help to continue always our work, because we know that we actually save lives. I know it sounds kind of very, pretentious. It's like, who are we to save life? But we actually do that. So that really helps. So when we get really sad, me and other volunteers, depressed, or we don't have energy, then we remember that we are actually saving people. So it's a very happy story, right, that she was saved. But the sad part of that is that she also had cats, and one of her cats ran away because, while she was being transported, she lost her, and she was crying a lot because of that. So these are the things that are kind of behind this kind of miracle happy stories. And this is another reason why I want to tell you about that is a lot of people asking me, like, are there Jews in Ukraine? I say, yes, there are Jews like that. How many Jews are in Ukraine? They say, it's very hard to count. We don't really know, because our Jews are very kind of disenfranchised, not members of any communities, often don't go to synagogue, so you cannot count them as members of communities, right? They don't belong to any community that can kind of keep, record of that. And when it's like a national census, people are hesitant to say that they're Jews, because who knows what's going to happen, right? Then and another thing is that not everyone has, Jewish documents to prove that they're Jews. So it's hard to estimate, maybe 100,000, maybe 200,000, who knows? But I say, they're Jews. And then the next reaction is like, why are they there? Why don't they leave? Especially from people who are in North America, who are kind of, oh, my grandparents left Europe, in the beginning of 20th century. My great-grandparents left Europe. So there's natural thing to expect that all these people would want to leave. So why I'm telling you the story of this old lady is that it's really hard to leave. You're leaving your house, your home, the place where you left, or, where you lived, or your life. You very often, you cannot take your pets with you. You have to leave your cat or your dog. It's very, very difficult to, bring them across the border. In some countries, if you bring them across the border, they will demand to euthanize the animal, because it's illegal to bring them. And during the war, you cannot make documents for them. So it's very traumatic. That's why a lot of people, they don't really want to leave, including my mother and father-in-law. They're in Kiev. They don't want to leave. We cannot convince them to come to Canada, for example, because they want to stay in their home. This is their life, their friends, their work, everything is there. And you cannot just take a plant and, take it out of the soil and plant in another place. People are not like that. So many people, they decide to stay, and they stay. And a lot of Jews stayed in Ukraine, and they're continuing staying there, and they're doing a lot of amazing volunteer work there, helping with humanitarian goods and supplies, helping army, helping collecting donations, doing lots of wonderful things. Another problem with why people don't want to leave, even if they want to leave, men from the age from 16 to 60 years old, they cannot leave legally. They have to stay because they are in this age bracket that they can be potentially drafted to army. No one is like, there is no mass drafting right now, so no one is drafting them, but like potentially that can happen. So they cannot cross the border unless they have a different citizenship, like Israeli citizenship. So who do that, they can leave, right? But majority, they have to stay. So all men are staying, right? What are they doing there? The life continues, and Jewish communities are functioning still. Before the war, Kiev, where I lived, had a very vibrant Jewish life. We had all kinds of communities, Orthodox, liberal. We have Chabad and different type of Hasidic communities. We had obviously conservative or Masorti. We have Forum. We have like a mystical Kabbalah community. Had secular community. We had like a lot of places, and like majority of those synagogues, like in my neighborhood where I live, there were like 5, I think, synagogues in like walking distance from where I live, and mikvah and kosher shop and restaurant, like everything that you need to have a Jewish life. So I cannot say that all of them continue to function, but for example, a chief Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Asman, he is doing really great work and supporting Ukraine. Especially he's supporting army, and he is going to Israel frequently, to raise awareness there and like convince Israel to help Ukraine more. So he's very, very dedicated to that work. And my community that I came from in Kiev, it's Masorti community, and a lot of people from that community got relocated from Kiev to another city that is called Chernovtsi or Chernovitz. You might have heard about it. It used to be a Jewish city, like in the beginning of 20th century, before the Holocaust, it was primarily Jewish city. So a lot of young people moved there because it's a safer place. It's not being so much attacked. It's like on the southern border of Ukraine, like on the border with Moldova, I think. If I'm not mistaken. And for example, their life continues there. They go to synagogue, they study Torah. We study Torah every Thursday. We have a class together, and we come together with these young people who are in Chernovtsi. Some of them are in Kiev, some of them are in other parts of Ukraine. We have some who got evacuated. These are all women, of course, who are in Germany and in other countries, but like all are within our community, and we come together every week and we study Torah together. So life continues. No one like abandons Jewish life. No one forgets who we are, and it was weird. We had all of these holidays. First it was Purim, because that was in the beginning of the war. Then it was Pesach. Then we had high holidays, and people celebrate all of those holidays despite everything and continue to practice Jewish life the way they practiced before the war. That's why these classes are so important for me. I guess they may be more important for me than for them, because I miss them so much. And I often feel guilty, that I'm in safety, that I have this privilege of being in Canada and having a good job. And, I have all of the things, the comfort of my life, and they don't have that. So it's very, very important for me emotionally to be with them. So the reality is such, and I guess that's a new thing, a new update of Ukraine, is that right now Ukraine experiencing a lot of severe difficulties with power, electricity, heating, water. So every time we have a class, electricity goes out, so people get disconnected because there is no electricity, no internet. But sometimes people would connect and say, I have, I charge my phone, and I will be present in the class until I have energy on my phone. And I'm saying, like, maybe you need energy for something else. And they say, no, we want to study Torah. They're sitting in complete darkness. Like, I cannot see them because there is no light. But they're coming to study Torah with me. What can I tell you? This is life of huge tragedies, but also life of such resilience and strength and hope. And they always say, if there will be electricity, I'll come. But, what if there will not be electricity? Sometimes they cannot. Sometimes they come and it turns off and they have to reconnect, and then they come back. They don't say, oh, I don't have electricity, I'm not going to study. No, they will come back and they will study. Sometimes we hear sirens, especially for those who are in Kiev. And we're sitting in a class and there is like a siren going off. Maybe can you go somewhere in a safe space? Do you want to hide somewhere? And they're like, no. We want to stay. We want to study together. So this is the strength, I think, of our community. We can support each other that much, and the dedication of people. And I think that Torah studies, and especially consistent Torah studies every week, maybe that also is helpful, because people have something to look forward to and to discuss it and to study together, and we have fun time. I'm looking forward to it every week very, very much. And it's always happening, and I'm very happy that I have this opportunity. So this is the other communities doing different things, right? I can only kind of speak about my community and people that I know, but that's what we do, and that helps us. So as I mentioned to you before, in the beginning of the war, there were a lot of rescue evacuation operations. That kind of changed since then. First, because a lot of people left the country, and I mean, not only Jews, people, just Ukrainians. Now the estimation is maybe 14 million people who left. Most of them are in Europe. Some, of course, went to Canada. Canada offers a pretty good welcoming program. It's called Canada-Ukraine Emergency Authorization Travel, which means that people from Ukraine can come here and get a work permit for 3 years and, stay legally here for 3 years and be able to work. Also get, free health insurance, social security number. So when I got here, I got everything, and it was pretty easy. And also with the support of local communities and organizations that help new coming immigrants. So some people make a decision to come to Canada. The problem with that is that Canada is pretty far away. So people prefer to stay maybe somewhere closer, especially if it's a mother with a child and the father is in Ukraine. Of course, they don't always feel comfortable to go as far as Canada, and they prefer to stay somewhere in Europe. But the situation with refugees in Europe, of course, is very complicated because there are millions and millions of people. So one of the girls from my community, she's a very good friend of mine. She went to Germany pretty recently because she used to work as a teacher at a school, and it became very, very complicated, and there was no work, and it's kind of, they didn't get paid often, just very hard, difficult life. So she decided to go to Germany, and she's living in a tent. It's winter in Germany, and she's staying in a tent, not an apartment, not in a house, right? So why I'm telling you that is that many people, again, to the question of why people don't leave Ukraine, is that a lot of us imagine that it's kind of an upgrade of life conditions. You are in the country where there's war, but if you go to a more developed country where there's no war, it's a much better situation. Not necessarily it is a better situation. When she was in Kiev, she lived in an apartment, right? she had all, her life was there. Now she's living in a tent, very sad and very depressed and lonely, in very not nice conditions. So becoming a refugee and this kind of immigrant is not a nice thing. Nobody wants to be a refugee. That's another thing, kind of not regarding Ukraine, but like if we're talking just about human rights, that people from Western countries, developed countries, they think that refugees, they want to come to their countries in order to have a better life, right, compared to what they had before. Again, that's not necessarily true, because if you had a good job in Ukraine, a house, maybe a cottage outside of the city, and you were like, say, a businessman who was making a decent amount of money, you come to, let's say, Canada, and the only work that you can do is maybe in construction if you're lucky, heavy labor, or like literally washing toilets, doing like really, really low skill labor and making very, very little money. So it's really, for most of the people, it's not an upgrade of their life, it's a downgrade. So yeah, that's another reason why people don't actually want to go anywhere. And the third reason is that people who stay in Ukraine, they feel that they can be very helpful. And this is true. And this is where kind of my part comes in. I have really good friends. We became really good friends during this war, volunteers who are in Ukraine and who are working tirelessly. It's like 24 hours job of helping people in the country. And even if you pay them, they're not going to leave, because this is the meaning of their life, because they're saving lives. They don't want to go anywhere. They want to stay there to help. And I talk to them every day of my life. We communicate, we talk, we decide what we are going to do. And the help that I am focusing right now is help to army. And as I said in the beginning, it was a lot of evacuation. Then it was a lot of helping, kind of direct financial help to people who live in Ukraine. Specifically, I had a kind of a network of helping single mothers with children, and it was just direct help. I would just send them money directly to their, from my bank account. I have a Ukrainian bank account, so it was very fast, and I send money to their bank accounts directly. Usually it would be like, let's say $200 per person or per family, 300, depends on the situation, $100, this kind of money. But it was very fast, and it was very important for people because they could buy things that they need right now. Sometimes tickets to get evacuated, but sometimes just food, because at some point people really started to starve, and especially single moms with children, because they don't have any support from their family often, and they might have like 2-3 children and they lost their job. What are you going to do? Then there was a lot of direct help to Jewish members of Jewish community. I had kind of a small networking of helping Jews who work in Jewish academia, teachers who teach Jewish subjects, researchers, and all this, people who work in all kinds of institutions. Because again, when the war started, like their jobs stopped, so they didn't have any means to survive really. So that was kind of in the, I would say, late spring, beginning of summer, kind of my area of really helping people directly. And sometimes people would come to me and say, we don't have money for food. Can you help us with something? So we did a lot of that. And then, like in the later months, I would say summer and autumn until today, now I'm mostly helping Army, and I communicate with Army directly. And I need to tell you that before the war, I was like an extreme pacifist. I had no respect for Army whatsoever. I felt that, I was like kind of a very classic type of a leftist young person. I was like, we need to take this money and we need to give it to schools and to hospitals. Why are we wasting so much money on Army? Guess what? Like now when I see like United States is sending like trillions of dollars to help Ukraine, I'm thinking, maybe it wasn't such a bad thing that they had so much money invested in the Army. I know it's very controversial, but that's like how my life position, like my life view changed in this time. And I began, communicating with soldiers. And they are sacrificing their lives. They live in absolutely horrible conditions, and they die every day. And people who I knew died already. And all that I do as of today is that I send money to buy things that are helpful to army. First of all, these are cars. Cars are, they are very expensive, but they need them because they need to be able to move from place to place swiftly because they're getting shelled all the time. They need to evacuate people who are wounded. They need to bring dead bodies, back kind of to safe territory. And cars, they save like hundreds of people. I think specific cars that we bought, me and my friends, my family. And cars, they cost a lot. They get damaged, need to fix them. So this is all done by our volunteers. My work is I'm sending them money and sometimes some supplies, but mostly it's money. And they buy cars and then they fix them and then they deliver them. So I talk about those volunteers who don't want to leave country. They take a car, they fix it, they put supplies in the car. This is food, clothing for soldiers, heating, gas. What else can they deliver? Starlinks, radios, shoes, all kinds of things. Put a full car, 2 cars, often 3 cars, and they drive to the front line directly, to the front line with all the explosions and shelling and rockets, and they just drive there through completely destroyed towns, and they help people on the way. They meet civilians, and they give them food and clothing and whatnot, and then they bring things to our soldiers, and they leave everything there and they drive back home. Every time they drive there, I'm so terrified that they are not going to come back, but I cannot stop them because they're going to go there anyway. And because of that, and I get direct access to what's happening on the front line and all the pictures and videos of what they see on the way. And it's horrifying. It's very, very difficult. It's very difficult to watch, but we support each other. I talk to them, they talk to me. And some days my friends would tell me, we cannot do this anymore, completely burned out, have no energy. And I would say, yeah, we'll stop, but we have to continue. Things like that. And on other days I would be like, I'm depressed, I can't do anything. And then they support me. So that's how it works. People connection. It's the best thing, the most beautiful thing that can happen in life. And people can do a lot of things together. So I never actually worked with any organization. As of today, I now established a connection with the organization that is called Maria A. I can share a link with you. Organizations, they have their upsides and downsides. They can help on a bigger scale than I can help, but they're also very slow, and my ways of working is very fast because we do everything on our own. And that's how we do it. So I know I talked a lot and I said a lot of information, so I just want to pause and give you a chance to ask a question. I know I said a lot of things. Yes?
Me?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Michal?
Yes.
Okay. Nice to meet you, Michal.
Nice to meet you and wonderful to listen to you. It's so kind of on the ground what you're telling us, which is really the best. I have a couple of questions. One is sort of minuscule and pragmatic. My mother's family comes from Chernovtsi.
Mm-hmm.
So and I've been there actually. I went there many years ago, 1991. Anyway, I'm curious as to why it has remained relatively safe. Are you confident that it will be so? And if so, are there ways that someone like me can support with contributions any of the kind of work that is being done in Chernovtsi specifically to take people in and help them. That's one sort of area of question. The other is, I'm just curious whether all the kind of work that you're describing that Jews are doing, sometimes within the Jewish community, but sometimes very much in collaboration with all sorts of other people, the soldiers, army, people, doing more general sorts of rescues, whether you think that in the end, when this is over, that will in any way sort of reshape non-Jewish Ukrainian perception of Jews in the Ukraine.
Well, who can predict the future? But I'll answer to the first question.
Yeah.
The reason why Chernovtsi is relatively safe, it's because of its geographic location. Because we need to look at the map of Ukraine to see how it's shaped. And it's the only part of Ukraine that hasn't been actually bombed till today. And it has to do with the borders and with the borders of Moldova and Romania. There's some place, you probably heard that there was this case when Russia bombed the border with Poland, and some parts of rockets, either Russian or maybe Ukrainian, they fell in Poland and they killed
Yes.
2 people there.
Yes.
So Russia doesn't want to do that. They don't want to hit
Right.
accidentally any country that is NATO
Right.
country.
Right.
So some places are more safe, some places are less safe.
Yes.
So the closer, that is kind of territory that is a little bit further from the border with Russia, and it's the southern part. So it's, who knows, but that is the way it is. And the ways to help, I really need to talk to them. If you specifically want to help Jewish community there, I really need to ask them if they need anything. So far, they didn't ask for anything. They kind of live on their own.
Not only, the refugee community there, I suppose, whether Jewish or not. It's just a sentimental request.
Yeah, I understand. I understand.
Okay.
I haven't had any requests from them, honestly. But
Okay.
we need to also know that, Jews in Ukraine, they're, it's very interesting the times that we live in. Jews are in privileged position compared to regular Ukrainians. There are more organizations that are helping them, especially with evacuation, all kinds of support, food, things like that. And there are a lot of organizations who collected millions of dollars to help them. So they are relatively doing better, given that they can prove that they're Jews. If they cannot prove that they're Jews, then it's a little bit more complicated. And also, generally speaking, Jews are middle class. Jews are bit financially in a better situation than maybe some, other people, especially Jews living in big cities, and people who are from, villages, more rural area, they're less financially secure. So Jews are not doing that bad, I have to say. It's interesting, right? It's not what we kind of expect.
I would expect it, actually.
Good. I don't know. It's just people often still imagine Ukraine as they're Cossacks, who are killing Jews still. That's not the case. I just want to let you know. And what is going to happen with the attitude of Ukrainians towards Jews? Still remember that we are a very tiny minority. So I make sure that everyone I help knows that we are Jews. I say that this is from Jewish community. I say I'm a rabbi, I'm very direct about that, because I want people to know that, these are money that someone donated, and these are Jews who donated money for you, despite all of the history that we had before, despite all of the pain, despite everything. So I make it very obvious to people, because I also represent these people, and I think this is what we are, and we have right to say that this is us. You obviously know that President Zelensky is a Jew, so that of course also is an important factor. How people see that, he had a tremendous support. He won in the second round of the elections with more than 70% votes, which is a huge support. He is, I think, the only Jewish president in this world besides Israel. So, and especially in the country which has such a tragic history of Holocaust, that's very unique, right? So it's hard to measure what's the attitude of Ukrainians towards Jews right now. What is going to happen? Depends on like how war is going to go. What is going to happen to all of us? That, who knows? But I would say I had a question once which I didn't like, and I will tell you. That question was like, the question was like, aren't you afraid that you're like investing all of your energy in helping Ukrainians and they will turn against you after the war? So, and I would say it doesn't matter.
Right. Right.
It's a question. We're saving lives of people.
Right.
I cannot predict the future.
Right.
My responsibility is this. And I think a lot of that coming from, again, maybe our education about Holocaust and the pain of like all of those people in Europe knew that Jews were being killed and didn't do anything. So if anything, I don't want to be that person.
Right.
I don't want to be that person, and I don't care. Like,
Right.
are they going to turn against me after that? Who knows what's going to happen?
Right. No, I totally, I would be that person too. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's something that I also, you didn't ask that, but I will tell you
No.
that I don't want anyone to feel guilty of like not being able to help or not knowing how to help, because I have connections. It's easier for me. For example, I very much have a lot of solidarity for women in Iran, and I really want to help them, but I don't have friends from Iran.
Right.
It's very hard. I have a dentist from Iran, and she's the only person I know, and I ask her, how can I help? So, don't feel guilty of that, but remember that the blessing of Jewish community is that we are all connected. So now, just within this conversation, now you're all connected to me. So you have a direct connection.
And if you want to leave us with any way that we, with our little tiny bits of money and heart, and can help, then do that.
I'll do that. But let's see if there are more questions, because I'm like talking all the time.
I have
Yes.
a question.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, let me first say that I too have family that came from Ukraine. My mother's parents came from a place called Geisin. Geisin. It's a not very large city, and apparently it's on a railroad line, not far from Kiev. And it appears in a story by Sholem Aleichem, which we happen to be reading in a Yiddish reading group that I was reading. And I was amazed when I came upon the name of my grandparents' town. And it was apparently a stop on this particular train line. So maybe that's how my grandfather got out. Maybe he took the train, who knows? We're told he escaped across the border to get out of the Tsar's army, which was true of many people. But my question was about the artistic heritage, because on the one hand, of course, there are a lot of Jewish artists. There were always in Odessa, operas, singers, and so forth. And in our book club, we read some things about some of those people who, just in terms of anything you want to tell us about the preservation of anything that's particularly being done about musicians, artists, any kind of artists, of which there are a lot of Jewish artists, I'm sure. I read one very sad article where one man was saying his museum was all smashed up, all the things he had tried to collect. I know the Russians are actually trying to crush cultural institutions. And from the Jewish perspective, do you have anything that you heard or can tell us about that aspect of the war, the destruction and also the effort to conserve cultural resources?
Well, I haven't heard anything about like a Jewish museum being destroyed. There are definitely memorials, like Babi Yar Memorial was damaged. The Holocaust Memorial in Kharkiv Oblast was also damaged. So these are definitely being destroyed. I don't really know anything about it. It's a great question. Museums are, it's a big pain because a lot of things are, if Russia occupies the city, then they steal everything, you know, everything that is in museums. So imagine if there are Jewish artifacts there, they're being stolen too. But I haven't heard anything about like specifically helping Jewish artists. Definitely there are programs that are helping people who have like academic degree or students who want to study to leave the
Yeah,
country.
you
So I
mentioned, you mentioned that. You mentioned that.
And I imagine that maybe there's something like that for
Some of them are the same people.
creative,
if
but
they
I don't
have-
know. I don't
Yeah.
know. Ellen?
So thank you very much. It's so common in human rights presentations that most of the discussion, most of the presentation is about all the violence and the war crimes. And yet this has been such a wonderful way to really talk about the other side, resilience, to talk about resilience and human dignity and how everyone is contributing to try to basically protect the human well-being and the dignity of others. And particularly your story about your weekly Torah discussion is just very, very moving in that respect. And I'm so appreciative because I have been watching the films, the videos of the presentations about the Russian war crimes. I'm a human rights activist. I work on the human right of food, and the complete disregard for all of these international covenants and conventions in the by the Russian dictator is horrifying. And I see others imitating him as well. And yet I come here this evening and hear you talking about just basic humanity and human dignity and how you try to make the kinds of crimes going on around you, the idea of non-response, not just the crimes unthinkable from your own perspective, but also the idea of non-response unthinkable from your own perspective. And that message is so often lacking. So I'm just really deeply appreciative that this is how you are addressing us on this human rights weekend.
Thank you. I say that this is because I'm a Jew. I totally think that this is because of dedication and upbringing that I had. But there's half of the people with whom I'm like communicating are not Jews, and they're exactly the same. So maybe it's coming from somewhere else, and not all of them are religious. I do have friends who are religious, like Christians, and they are also doing a lot of things. But some people are like completely have nothing to do with religion, and they're doing more than we do. So I granted it to Jewish heritage, but who knows? Who knows why? It's like hard for me to understand why such cruelty happens in this world, why people do that. How can they like destroy lives of so many people, like destroy houses, destroy power plants, make people sit in coldness and darkness and just like fear and make them suffer and kill, people of all ages. But also it's kind of the same but positive amazement of where all these kind people come from. Why are they so kind? Why are they so really selfless? Like really, they like volunteers. They don't do anything else. They all of their money that they had, they invested in this, in saving people. All of their savings. Many people took loans from banks to help other people. Many of them again lost their jobs. They themselves barely have things to eat, and still they continue their work. So it's really amazing. And that's what really helps, I think, that if we only watch at the pictures of like dead bodies and destruction, it can get very depressing. And then you feel very like, I cannot do anything. I'm facing this monstrosity. and I'm so little, what can I do? So instead of that, it's much more it's much more interesting and fun because we joke a lot. That also, I think it's a defensive mechanism to look at the bright side of that and the people and the love that they share.
Yeah,
That
to look
helps
at
a lot.
humanity. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Sure.
Sherry?
Well, I have many, many questions, but I'll just say a few. So I was a little confused until you explained in the end. You're doing all this work yourself, or is it that you have an informal network of people who help you? And what is your impression of the work that the organizations are doing? That's question one. Question two, it just, and I just as a preface, my grandfather came from Kiev, from outside of Kiev, from someplace Spol or someplace like that. Does that sound like a real place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's where my family came from. And anyway, the other question I had though was, now I forgot. Give me. Oh, I was very impressed to hear that the Jewish community is so much bigger than I imagined it. And I was wondering how you actually got such a strong Jewish identity. Did you have Jewish education also as a child? How did you become so dedicated to Judaism and that you went to JTS and are now a rabbi? How did that? I'd like to hear a little bit about that story. And you can answer those and I'll try to remember my third question.
Okay, so yeah, so the way I do things is all grassroots networking, just like people-to-people contact and communication. And as I said, it's all done through the phone and chatting and calling and all of that. So we talk people to people. I never had a success of collaborating with any organization. I'm not going to mention any names of any organization that I reached out to. None of them ever helped me in any way. And that has to do something with bureaucracy and with, they process big amounts, like millions of dollars, and it's all very complicated. And I don't know what they do and how they do. And I no good successful example for that yet, at least. The way we do it is, and it's again, this is the beauty of Jewish community, that I'm a Jew and you're a Jew and we trust each other. I have a friend who's a Jew. He says, like, this is my friend. And we're all like Jews and we're all part of like larger Jewish community of the world. And so we can communicate really fast. We don't need to like send each other documents proving who we are, or like, I don't know. We just, because I know that they're from this and this community. They know these people. They know this, like, I know these people, all the Jewish geography, but like in a very good way of using that. And that's why we can collaborate very fast and we can trust each other. And I know that if I send money to this person to pay for the evacuation of this person, it's going to go there 100%. And this trust, it's not possible with organizations because they have risks, because they're like, I don't know, there are all kinds of financial implications and government regulations and all of that. So if I come to an organization, even it's a Jewish organization, and I say, like, we do this and that, can you help me? They would say, actually, no. And that was my experience so far. And your second question, which I'm not like, I understand why that's happening. It's just the way it is. Like, I want to be, honest about that. I'm not blaming them, maybe a little bit, but there are reasons for that. And your second question was, I did not have Jewish education. I was born in the late Soviet Union. I was born in 1984. So there were no synagogues. Like, there were a little bit of synagogues, but there was no, like, it was dangerous to go there. And they were not really functioning. There were no Jewish schools when I was a child, so I went to normal school. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, I was 7 years old. And I was the first generation of young post-Soviet people who started to be interested in their identity. So a lot of people from my generation became Jewish activists and, very involved in Jewish life and community. And I wanted to know what I'm from, what am I, what is this all about? And a lot of people were searching for this identities, not only Jews. There were a lot of, let's say, Ukrainians or Russians who turned to their religion, to Christianity, because that was also prohibited under the Soviet Union rule, right? So people were coming to that. So it was a huge revival of kind of religious life and people trying to find their religious roots and cultural roots. So there was not only about Jews, but like all kinds of ethnicities and nationalities and religions. And that's a whole story. We would need to sit here for at least another hour for me to tell you how I got to JTS. But I just was always in love with our heritage and our culture and our history. That's a short story. Peter?
Okay, can I finish my my last question?
Last question, okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's two, and another point and another question. Of course, well, actually 2 points. One is that it's just so inspiring to see what an individual can do. We always feel like this is so overwhelming. What could we, one person, do? But yet you're a testimony to what one person can do, just taking the initiative and having the feeling and establishing your own network. It's just so moving and inspiring.
Thank you.
I'm wondering, though, with the history of, to go back to this issue again, in a way, of anti-Semitism that existed in Ukraine. And my brother and I talked at the beginning of the war, and we said, given the history, we wouldn't, if my grandfather hadn't come over, we would have been dead by now. And my brother said we would have been dead twice because of, the repetitive attacks and so forth. So I wonder, now with Zelensky being president, how everything, things have changed, but how much that's still at present, how much is there still a feeling about it? And also, what do they think of how Zelensky's doing now? He was very popular when he was elected. Is he still so popular? That's my final question.
He's still very popular. I don't know. I don't think it's possible to estimate like realistic numbers, like what's the percentage, how popular he is during the war, but he is still very popular. He records videos every night with the updates, and he's emotionally is very supportive. I watch those videos quite frequently, especially when I get upset, because he has just very warm personality and he's very young and, he's just beautiful to look at. And I think he has a lot of support still. He is a symbol really of Ukrainian resistance. About anti-Semitism, as I said, I was born in 1984. I never really experienced anti-Semitism, especially not in the way it used to be. There is anti-Semitism on the internet, right? But that's everywhere in the world. I have never experienced it the way, I heard like once the neighbor told me that, you're dirty Jews, something like that. And that was, by the way, in Russian, not in Ukraine, just to be clear. But I give this example always that in the modern history of Ukraine, how many attacks on Jewish communities were in the United States, how many synagogues were attacked, and how many were attacked in Ukraine. You all know about United States, 0 in Ukraine, I can tell you. That never happened in the modern history of Ukraine. Modern history, of course, being since the collapse of Soviet Union. So in this regard, it feels much safer there than it was in the United States. Mm. And is there like anti-Semitism? Are there people who hate Jews? I'm sure they are. Was I ever attacked by that? No, never. But again, maybe if I was a Hasid who would be wearing like a specifically Jewish, garments and look like very Jewish with pale and everything. Maybe they had, maybe someone would yell at them on the street or something, but I never had this. How would they know that I'm a Jew? How would anyone know that I'm a Jew in order to attack me? So that's the reality. So very interesting how times change, but I never had any bad experience. On the internet, a lot of bad experience. What can I say? That's internet. Okay, I think we're like ran out of our turn. So
Maybe we can hear from Peter just because.
yeah, Peter, I'm waiting for you.
Oh, good, great. So just to give us a follow-up on relationship that seems to have been occasionally fraught, occasionally better between Israel and Ukraine. And I wanted to get your take as a Ukrainian, as a Jew, looking at how Israel has been either supportive or not of the Ukraine.
So first of all, thank you for the question. I was trying to avoid it because I promised myself that I'm not going to talk about Israel, but thank you for asking. This is, I'm imagining, going to be like the end of the video, so I will say it. First thing, I am actually not Ukrainian. I moved to Ukraine. My husband is Ukrainian. I was born in Russia, and I'm a Russian citizen. I don't like to talk about it at all, but I also don't want to like pretend that I'm Ukrainian when I'm not. I did move to Ukraine in 2014, and I, got married there, and that's why I lived and worked in Ukraine. And this is where I plan to go back because I left Russia like for good. And but I'm still a Russian citizen. My husband is Ukrainian, and my parents-in-law are in Ukraine. My own parents are not there. So Israel, my brother, who is also from Russia, he's in Israel right now. He is trying to get Aliyah. He is there for more than half a year already. He cannot get it because Israel is making it very difficult for people from either Russia or Ukraine to make Aliyah right now. And there is a lot of bureaucracy, and it's very hard for people to prove that they're Jews. And this is, again, something that I ask people a lot. Like, if you imagine that there is a war happening in your country right now, like you woke up today, there is war, and you're like grabbing your stuff, your bag, and you're running away, you run for your life, and you get on the flight. You don't need a visa to come to Israel. You get on the flight, you reach Tel Aviv, and then on the border, they ask you what you're doing there, and you say, I'm running away, I'm a Jew, and they say, like, what's your documents? And you say, like, what are my documents? What kind of documents would you bring with you? That's a question for all of you. Quick brainstorming. What would you bring to prove that you're a Jew? That's a serious question. You can answer.
The only thing I would have, and it wouldn't work in Israel, is my conversion certificate. And since I was converted under the auspices of the Reform movement, there's no proving anybody in Israel, at least, that I'm Jewish.
Right. So that's number one. Reform conservative converters, we had a huge problem with that our members from my community who were converted couldn't make Aliyah to Israel. What else can be a document? James, are you saying something? We cannot
Probably
hear you,
need some letter from.
Jim, you have to unmute.
Hi.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, just think of a letter from an Orthodox rabbi who would attest to the fact that you've been a member of the Jewish community.
What if you are not a member of Jewish community?
Right.
Because zero Orthodox rabbis in your life. Your mother is Jewish, grandmother, all of them. You're not a member of Jewish community.
Yeah. Well, all you need is the mother.
Yeah, but how are you going to prove?
Question. Good question.
So you see, it's on one hand, if you have those documents, then you have them handy. They were all like approved and checked before. For whatever reason, you were maybe planning to make Aliyah already. Then you come to Israel, you get a support. It's very welcoming for you. I mean, not very welcoming, but welcoming for you. There are special services that can help you. Good. If you cannot prove, you're out. Like they're not going to let you in. If they let you in, they will not let you stay. We have a very difficult situation with my brother because his mother is not Jewish. He's like, it's complicated. We're not really bloodly related, but whatever. He's Jew, like through his father, and they requested 1 million documents and never satisfied. And it's very complicated situation. And that's number one. That people who are running for their life, especially in the beginning, ran to Israel. They thought that Israel would be welcoming. That didn't really happen unless you have very specific documents. And what's even more kind of painful in that regard is that people like my brother, who has Jewish education, who studied, Jewish, what do you call it? He in the college, his major was in Jewish archive work, who's very much a Jew in all kinds of respect, but he cannot stay there because he is lacking some documents. There are some people who got baptized, have zero knowledge of does it mean to be a Jew, but they have some kind of a document that says, that grandma is Jewish, and then they are free to go. So this is what Israel is doing, controversial things. Then the other thing is, of course, political support of Israel to Ukraine. It's ups and downs. Some days we hear that they're going to help. Some days we hear that they're not going to help. Being very kind of cautious, trying to not to provoke any, aggression from Russia because of the whole Middle Eastern politics, which I'm not a huge expert on, so I don't want to say anything wrong about that. And I'm also, if I don't know something, then I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. But I know that they're always saying if Iran is going to get involved in this war, then we're going to get involved in Israel because we don't want Iran to be participating. But Iran is clearly participating already by providing, military equipment to Russia. So are people disappointed in Israel? Yes. That's, by the way, to the question of will the attitude of Ukrainians change too? Change in regards to Jews? In regards to Israel, Ukraine was very pro-Israel before, now not so much. Because they think that Israel is supporting Russia, essentially. So we understand that Israel is not giving weapons to Russia, right? But they see Israel as being on the side of Russia, rather than on the side of United States. I wish it was different, but I'm not an expert in all of the politics that are happening there, and I don't know what's there, as we say, under carpet games and discussions and what's happening.
I get the impression that the population of Israel is much more supportive of Ukraine than the government.
Yeah,
that the people in Israel are much more supportive.
Absolutely, yes. When we have wonderful collaboration with, I have a wonderful friend who they have an organization that is providing first aid kits and medical supplies to army. Amazing. We ask them, they send us things for free, tourniquets, first aid kits. Great. Absolutely, you're right. Individually, people are very supportive. Government, very complicated. Don't really know what's going on there with them. I wish at least they would be more accepting of people who are coming and not being so,
Well, with the present new government that's forming, it's going to get worse rather than better, unfortunately. It's really a terrible thing. They're just going to put people who have very, very rigid ideas about Jewish identity in charge of these processes, which is really terrible. I think we have to stop, but before we go, I want to make sure that you tell us how we as individuals can be helpful to you and your efforts in Ukraine.
So I will tell you a couple of things, give you 3 options. Option number 1, we did it actually in my community here in Toronto. We did a winter clothing drive for Ukraine, specifically to people who live in Ukraine. So we collected a lot of winter clothing and we sent it to them. So if you ever want to send something, there are ways to send things to Ukraine, especially they need winter clothing right now. So it can, even if it's a small package, you still can send it, you know, anything will be helpful. So material thing that you can send from your place, that's option number 1. And you can ask me how to do it and I can tell you more about that. But if you want to organize something bigger, you can also do that. It just will cost more money because shipment is expensive and all of that. Option number 2, I'll put in the chat. This is organization. I just started collaborating with them kind of recently, but they're very good organization. They're actually located in Canada. They are established by Canadian military and they're helping those civilians in army. It's called Mria Aid. And then Mria means dream in Ukrainian. So if you want to donate, they're very safe place to donate. You can see what they use the money for. And as I said, medical supplies, non-little military equipment and humanitarian aid to the front lines where it's desperately needed now. So I trust them very much. I mean, I'm collaborating with them. I don't get anything from them yet, but like I know them and I trust them and they are good people. And if you want to support me with like, you know, little donation or something for direct help, like the money that you give me, I send it directly to people. And if you trust me enough, you can send me like a Venmo, for example. I'll put it here too. And I'll put my email for anyone. Which email do you want to give? So you can email me if you have any questions. Here's my email. Yeah, and you can find me like on Facebook or whatever. So you can always contact me and message me and I can tell you more. And
so you're going to give us a Venmo handle for you? Or
yeah,
is it
this is the Venmo handle. It's Alisa. What is this word? Dash. Zilberstein. It's in the chat.
It's the second chat, Jim, is
The
the
second.
Yeah, we have it.
yeah.
I
Oh,
have it.
okay. You got it, Sherry?
Yeah.
I'll just share it. Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Tzipi. This is really wonderful.
I bow to a higher authority. Thank you so much, really.
Thank you so much for inviting me and thank you so much for coming.
And it's been wonderful. And it really is, as Sherry was saying, it really inspires us to do more and to be directly involved in ways that we instead of sitting back. Oh, and that's wonderful to hear about what you're doing and to also to enjoy talking to you. It's
Thank
great.
you so much. And we
Yes.
can always talk again if you want. Because things
Okay.
are changing, you know. We can meet again.
Yes.
And
Wonderful.
remember that for me, it's also therapeutic and important because when I see your faces and I see that you came and that you're interested and that you have questions, I get like recharged, you know, I have more energy. Makes me really feel good and happy. And
Alisa, when you in your Torah group, do you talk to each other in which language?
in Russian. Because most of the Jews are Russians.
Yeah.
Хорошо.
They all can speak Ukrainian, don't get me wrong. Everyone can speak Ukrainian, but like day-to-day language.
Yeah.
I speak Russian to my husband.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful
Yes.
evening and a week,
And-
You.
and a happy Hanukkah.
Happy
Yes.
Hanukkah. You too.
Yes. All
Blessings.
right. Take care.
All the
For you
best.
too.
Bye bye.
Bye
Good
bye.
night.
Bye. So long.